La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast. You know what day it is? Inner Wealth Podcast with David Liz. So manifest the greater this. And things all good cause I say it is. Invest in your inner wealth. Real generational wealth is mental health. It's an inside game, no toxicity. Let's talk and more listening. Ladies and gentlemen, and now introducing David McCullough, Elizabeth Holstra, host of the Inner Wealth Podcast. Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast. Disclaimer. Information in this podcast and interview is not to be taken as medical advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any inner hacking program and before making any lifestyle changes. The material shared by guests in this podcast is not the opinion of David McCullough or Elizabeth Holstra and disclaims any responsibility of inaccurate credentials of guests or information used that may cause harm. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statement or opinions made on this podcast. This general information is not intended to replace your healthcare professional.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Inner Wealth Podcast. My name is Dave.
And my name's Liz. What up, though?
What up, though? We are at the Earn Your Leisure studio, and we got a special guest. I'm here physically, but unfortunately, Liz couldn't make it, but she's back home, and she's on screen, so we still doing it.
I'm on screen.
We make
still
it
here.
happen no matter what. So
yes,
we got
always.
a very special guest with us. Let's do a little backtracking for myself. I spent probably in the early, I want to say probably 2013, 14, I started actually working on my lymphatic system, and that had a profound effect on my health. And fast forward probably around 2018, I started getting more manual lymphatic therapy work, and it just greatly enhanced my life even more. And Elizabeth have actually found a website or an Instagram page called Stop Chasing Pain. And on Stop Chasing Pain,
it was man, as soon as I found this page, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta send this to David. So I sent it right to you. I'm like, look at this guy. I'm like, he has all the information about lymphatic, because that was when we were heavily getting, manual lymph drains, and it was really, really changing our lives. So I was like, we need to get this guy to inception, and now.
And we actually,
hello, Dr. Perry.
Yeah, we got him to inception, and now Dr. Perry is actually on our advisory board. So welcome, Dr. Perry, onto our podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's awesome. I remember that when you reached out to me on Instagram, it feels like yesterday. It was such a wonderful message that you sent. And then I remember just immediately hitting the reply button to you. And then we started this conversation and connection. And you said, you want to come out and visit us? And I'm like, yes. It's just the whole universe or energy, whatever you believe, just lined up, and it felt right. And it's that old Jerry Maguire line, you had me at lymph. I mean, as soon as you start talking about lymph, I'm there.
Yeah.
I even got my lymph shirt on for those that can see here.
What does that say?
When in doubt, lymph it out.
Lymph it out.
In my world, that means you always check out and assess the lymphatic system first in everything. So if you're ever stuck and you're not sure what's going on, go take a look at that system, and you'll probably find the answer or a big piece of it.
So you said something about conversation, and like what we do is we don't interview people. We like to have conversations. So let's even dive deeper into the conversation where describe even what the lymph is. What is the lymph?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, it's a system that not many people are familiar with. I mean, they may have heard about it, and usually under one context when they hear the word cancer. Mm-hmm. And when they hear the word cancer, I mean, all sorts of these mental things come in, right? And then they say that with cancer, it can spread through the lymphatic system. And it can. But it's also a system that's designed to kill cancer cells. It's also one of the reasons why more people aren't walking around with cancer. Because what many people don't know is that everybody already has cancer. It's just whether it manifests or not. So your immune system always suppresses it. It just doesn't magically jump out of nowhere. It can build up over time when your immune system, I don't like to use the word weaken. I've actually chosen to choose my words very carefully over this last year, which we'll talk about. But I'll say maybe it's not at its optimum. See how different that is?
Yeah.
And it can make you vulnerable to something you might not have been vulnerable to before and can come out. But the most important thing that people need to know about lymphatic is that it's a major part of your immune system, and that's designed to fight bad things off, like viruses and toxins and bacteria, fungus, cancer cells, metabolic waste, and cellular waste, which is the actual your own cells naturally dying every day on purpose because they're supposed to.
Right.
And then you're supposed to make new ones, right? Cells die and you make new ones. That's how you become stronger and more resilient.
Right.
Even when you train and you work out, you purposely destroy tissues so you can rest, recover, and regrow and go harder, faster, stronger, longer. But all that stuff has to get out of you.
Yeah.
If it stays inside of you, that's not good. That's toxicity. And the lymphatic system is the primary system that removes all of those. And it's also part of your cardiovascular system, which many people don't know of. And that one is blood flow into things and out of things. That's arteries and veins. But also your heart health is related to lymphatics. So if you have a circulation issue, you have a lymph issue.
Yeah.
If you have a lymph issue, you have a circulation issue. You can't separate the two. There's no separation of body systems in the body. That's impossible.
Right.
And
well, while you say that too, I like a statement that you always say, and I kind of repeat it, which is basically it's systems versus symptoms.
right.
You know, that is not just an isolated incident. So can you even talk about like how like the originating source of pain, like if you have a pain in your foot, that doesn't mean that that's where the actual issue is.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, that's where Stop Chasing Pain, the name of my brand, came from. Because I've been in healthcare, started out as a chiropractor back in 1997, so a while, but I was just going after sites of pain. People would come in and say, Doc, it hurts here. And then I would do a lot of stuff to there. And in my word, it's a lot of back stuff, right? You think chiropractic, you think low back. So I have all the beautiful toys and treatments and therapies that I could do right to something. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But I got very frustrated of why it would always keep coming back. And then I was always focused on, well, why didn't it work for these people? And it worked for them. There's got to be something that I'm missing. And that's when I started to just really look at what pain is. And I stopped treating just where it hurts. Because for me, I realized that pain is just your body trying to tell you that there is an issue somewhere. But it's not telling you what it is or where it is. It's just a communication signal. And what most people need to know is that it's not a punishment signal.
Yeah.
Even though we look at it like that, it's a protective signal. It's your body saying, hey, Perry, whatever you're doing, I don't like it much. And I'm telling you that. And if we listen to it, sometimes we can help it. But most often we always say, well, maybe it'll go away.
Yeah.
Right. And it does, because the body is very resilient.
Yes.
And it's designed to do that. But what if it keeps coming back? That's telling you something, especially if you're treating where it is. So I tried to figure out how I would define pain when people ask me, what does that mean for you? And it's this. Pain is a request for change. And I'm going to say that one time slowly. Pain is a request for change.
Ooh.
That's
good.
Because we're basically living in one big stimulation response loop. So the body is just responding to what's happening in the environment, right? Stimulation. So when you talk about it's not a punishment, and we had this conversation earlier, the body's not attacking itself. The body's not just going against itself for no reason. Where does that thought process come from?
Yeah, well, I always tell people that if you didn't have pain, you would die way faster than we had pain, because pain is awareness.
Right.
Because you're aware of a body part because it hurts.
Right.
That's usually the only time most people even know they have different body parts.
Right.
Because they're so unaware of their own embodiment. That's called embodiment. We're detached from that. We're so caught up in our head, the cortical, right? Or we're looking at screens most of the time. You don't even feel outside of the body. And I always say, if you didn't have pain, you wouldn't know if you cut yourself. You wouldn't know if you burned yourself. And you would go through life and you'd probably die because you didn't know that you needed to take care of something.
Right.
Right. But also,
So really pain is a protection mechanism for you.
It's a survival mechanism. Exactly what it is. Mental pain and physical pain, because they're both the same. You can't separate the two. And there's people that'll tell you that there's no pain sensation in the brain. There's no one section for pain. It's everywhere. Right.
So I guess this is a deeper question. Have you ever read the book, The Holotropic Universe?
What is it called?
Holotropic Universe?
No, but
By
I've heard of it.
Malcolm
Yeah. Elizabeth, you actually talked about that book, I think. Right?
Yeah, I did.
Diner food.
So if we're talking about that in nature, like, holotropically, that it's all the body. The whole system is interconnected. And I think you talked a lot about that, the interconnection between everything. Like, our thing, what we talk about is stress and trauma all the time, which is a protection mechanism, right? And so when that activates, it has an effect on the whole system. So when we talk about mental health, we don't like to talk about mental health just like this isolated thing. It's everything. It's your whole body. It's your whole way of whatever you perceive to be danger. Your body has to react to all of it, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you have the different systems of your body, kind of backtracking to what we were talking about before. And then some examples are your musculoskeletal, which are muscles, and then bones, and connective tissue they call fascia. And that's usually what somebody complains of first.
Right.
My back hurts, or I've got a tightness in my shoulder, and then you go get that treated. But you've got your nervous system, right? That's your cardiovascular system, your lymphatic system, your digestive system. And then in Western medicine, at least, or even in science, we break things down into parts to try to understand the parts.
Right.
But everything changes when you put those parts back together. There's nothing in the universe, actually, but nothing, especially in the body, functions in isolation. So I always say that no system in the body ever works alone, and it never gets injured alone, and it never heals alone.
That's one of my favorite quotes from you.
Yeah, and it's very powerful. And if you think about it, it's common sense. But if you look at modern medicine, we do the exact opposite. We have specialists for every system.
Yeah.
Like,
Why
you have to go see this guy.
Why is that? Right. Why is
I
that?
ask myself that every day. I got a heart guy, and they don't talk to the gut guy. And I'm like, well, you do realize that those two body parts talk all day long, right?
Right.
And here's my joke, is that your body doesn't even know what a heart is. It doesn't even know what a gut is, because humans created those terms.
Right.
The body is just saying, I'm just me. I'm one.
The heart probably sees itself as itself. Or does it see it? Or that's a good question now.
Yeah.
So does the body feel its interconnectedness within itself? Because as human beings, we typically, we're either dependent or independent, but our best way of survival is being interdependent. So the body probably is the most healthiest interdependent machine ever, well, that we should know of, right?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Well, you know this better than anybody, that human beings were social creatures. We're pack animals, they call it. We need to interact with other energetic beings.
Yeah.
If we don't, we slowly begin to deteriorate. And you physically waste away, and mentally you can go insane.
Yeah.
Well, isn't mental kind of the point, like the beginning of it all? I mean, if you're mental, like if you're stressed out, you're tensing your muscles, which is causing issues within your body. So everything starts, I feel like, mental, right? And then works its way through the body. Like stress is a huge thing that causes all type of body issues. And if you don't, if your mental stability is off, you're going to see it, manifest physically in your system, in your body.
Absolutely, 100%. And so, but human beings, we need our alone time too, right? You need time away to process, but then you need to go back to other people. And I think the body's the same way. The heart knows that it works with everything else, but the heart has its own individual role with itself.
Right.
But what I also say in my view is that you're only as strong and resilient as the system that you have that is the most vulnerable. And it's not always the one that's showing the most symptoms or the most pain. Because what will very often happen is, like in nature with humans, is that when somebody is suffering, another person will carry the load for you. Hopefully,
right,
you have that in your life. And then they'll take the burden for you.
Right.
Until you're strong enough
they call
to
that standing in the gap.
Yeah, until you're strong enough to come back on your own. But now they're carrying double load, triple load.
Right.
So they're the ones that are going to usually manifest something. But that's not the problem. That's the one that's actually saying, you know what, I'm doing all the work here.
Yeah.
Why don't you go look for the one that really needs to help, but it's the one that's not screaming. You follow?
Yeah.
And then that's what we do. We chase symptoms, and we think that symptoms are telling you what the problem is. Symptoms are just information that the body is sending you. And I always tell about, I wish it was that simple, that it was where you feel your symptoms.
Right.
Nothing in the universe is that easy. And if it was that easy, anybody could, anybody could take care of it.
That's kind of like my mom talks about it from a social work and therapy standpoint, like the identified client. Like you bring your kid in who has ADHD and anxiety, but that's just a symptom of what's happening in the dynamic of the family. They're bearing that burden because they're taking on the brunt of the emotional release of the mother or the father, but it's not the kid. And they would bring the kids to me all the time and say, okay, he has ADHD and ADD, fix him. But I'm thinking, well, what environment does he live in, and who created the environment?
Right.
You know, so that's kind of like the same thing, where it's like, that's not the root though. The kid is not the root issue. The person who creates the environment is the issue.
Yeah, that ties perfectly into one of the sayings that I use all the time, is that you cannot get well in the same environment you became ill within.
Right.
And that's
I would know that best.
Yeah. So and people say, what environment do you mean? Yes is the answer. Usually the one that's swimming in your own head, right? But your personal relationship, your career relationship, like even some things that you can go back even to stuff that you may be dealing with that happened to people in past generations. I mean, that's stuff that we can get into later if you want to. But it always also ties back to the lymphatics in a way, because the lymphatics keep the internal environment of your body functioning at optimum by clearing out waste. So if you can't clear out the waste, you have more of a toxic environment that your cells live in. So you're more prone to sickness because the cells don't have an environment that's conducive towards healing. And you're trillions and trillions of individual cells, but they all work with each other. And they don't function in isolation. We look at them that way. So we have like a microscope, and I could look at it and tell you exactly everything that this individual cell does. And I'm like, well, I appreciate the information, but that doesn't help me at all. Because when I stick that guy in with a couple of trillion more, it's not the same cell. And if I stick it in different people, it's not the same cell.
Because they all collectively share.
The cell's going to react to the story of the person carrying the cell around.
Right.
That's your life.
Yeah.
So when you come in with a disease name, I don't like to. It's a label, and they can become the label. Right? So I have Alzheimer's, or I am now Alzheimer's.
Right.
And then you have this cultural, societal connotation that goes with it. But here's what people need to understand is that even if you have the same diagnosis and have 10 people in the room, they didn't get to the diagnosis the same. They didn't get to the illness the same way. Yeah. It's not the same causative factor, but we treat people that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do that because we're not tissues. We're energy, first of all, and we're human beings, and those change based on your story up to that point and the story that you tell yourself in that moment.
Yeah. We talked about nocebo, the nocebo and placebo, which is most people know placebo means I shall please in Latin, and nocebo, I shall harm, and placebo Like I told you, every time me and Liz, we both do this. Like any supplements or anything like that, we go read the reviews. We want to read the research because we know that that's going to reinforce our belief on the supplement or product that we're taking. It's going to help us. And you can't separate placebo from anything, first of all.
Right.
But the opposite is true as well. And if you hear a diagnosis of cancer or whatever, that affects you just as the same as a placebo.
Yeah.
And the whole system is, again, affected by that, right?
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Because everything has a placebo effect. That's how you view the world and you view yourself. You can't separate the two. It's impossible. And I think it's an asset. It's a power.
Yeah.
Because if you have the power to change something because of how you believe in it, well, I'm going to use that. It doesn't mean I'm going to abandon my therapies that I need.
Right.
I'm not saying that at all. But I can tell you this much, though. If you think the opposite with the nocebo, that's the one where it's a negative input.
Yeah.
You virtually don't stand a chance of getting better because you don't believe you will. And how you think changes your biology. You can think yourself well. You can think yourself sick. I see it all of the time. Right? And your cells will go, okay, well, you're telling me this. I'll do exactly what you want me to do, even from a conscious level, but even more so from a subconscious level.
Right.
That's happening in there. And then I had a physician once say, because you teach in the medical community and they downplay placebos. And somebody said, well, isn't this just a placebo effect? And the doctor said, I certainly hope so. Because it's that powerful, right? But
the mind is everything.
But here's the thing, it works both ways. You can give somebody a medication that is part of the study that is supposed to work. And it won't work because you tell them it's not the medication. It goes both ways.
Right.
That should tell you something right there.
Right. Yeah.
I read somewhere that a guy said, positive thinking isn't going to guarantee success. That you're going to come through on a positive side. But negative thinking, you're definitely going to succeed at not reaching where you want to. It's like you at least stand a chance if you think on the positive. If you think on the negative, you're on the downside.
Yeah, so my mother ended up having Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah.
Back when I was probably about 10 years old, and it's cancer, form of cancer, in the lymph system, obviously.
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with her, and that one day she'll come on and be able to share her own story. But I had a conversation with her over the years, and I said, well, because we understand this aspect. And I asked, so why do you think you ended up with the cancer? And she said she was working at a job that, she hated, first of all. And then when you're working at a job you hate, and then, and then too, she was discriminated upon. She worked at a job for 20 years, never got a raise, had somebody come in. She basically mentored them, and they end up getting a raise over her. She ended up getting a lawsuit and winning that lawsuit, but she was at the job, and her shoulders is just like this.
Yeah.
So what is lymph travel? Everywhere, right? And if you're getting clogged up in here, then all of a sudden, the immune system is, what'd you say, weakened. Did you use the term weakened or compromised?
Yeah.
So you don't like, which word did you like using?
Yeah, I just said it's not working at its optimal.
It's not optimal.
Yeah.
So is another thing too is that it's just burden.
Right.
Is too much load to try to handle. But so in telling that story, my mother, she was able to basically get well from cancer because she didn't believe that was a death sentence for her. She never let me see her like in a down state too, because she didn't want that to affect me, because that was a death sentence back in 1990 about cancer. I mean, today it's still even more so, but her thought process, and her doctor told her, I can't tell you, I can't be the one to tell you whether you live or you die. That's not in my hands. I'm just someone here to help you. And a lot of times doctors with their words are the ones who give the sentence of life or death, whether you have this chance to live or you don't have this chance to live. And it's all based on, too, the person's belief. And I think Bruce Lipton says that back with the biology of belief.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually saw something on a YouTube channel this morning, and someone had said that they had somebody, a priest had come in to give last rites to someone in the hospital. And then the person ended up dying 2 days later. But there was the wrong room. They went in there. He gave last rites to the wrong person.
Wow.
It was not terminal. They were not terminal. And the person who was terminal that they were supposed to go into ended up living for 3 more weeks. So it was almost like the person said, okay, well, it's the next stage, obviously. You're coming in to give me last rites, now I'm going to go. And like, you realize he wasn't terminal, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the power of the placebo and the nocebo. And I wanted to go down a little bit deeper into understanding that. And I started to study neuroscience and pain science and the brain and say, okay, well, why does the body do what it does? Why do humans do what they do? And I started to look at, positive and negative, and from the brain standpoint. So I learned that the brain only has one thing that it's concerned with, and unfortunately, it's not happiness. It's not dying. Yeah, like, hey, if you don't die today, check the wind box. That's good.
That's good.
I know you're not really happy, but at least we're not under the earth 6 feet.
Right.
That's good. And it just does the best it can with what it's got. But the brain is programmed to look at things from a survival negative aspect first. As a self-protective mechanism. So so if you're walking through the woods and you hear a noise, it's smarter to assume that it's something not good, or a tiger or a predator. So that's kind of negative.
Well,
but
at least not in the movies. They did stuff in the woods in the movies.
Or slasher movie.
They're
Jason.
like, hey, what is that? Black people are like this. I'm gone.
Exactly. Yeah. Somebody's like me. I wonder what that is. Yeah. And if you have that momentary lapse, it's too late. You're already dead.
Right.
So the smart play is to think negative. And it does.
And that's called neuroception, right?
Yeah. And so that's why I tell people, don't feel bad if you have a negative aspect of something. Because when you're caught in a survival mode, that's your default mechanism heightened up even more, especially with what's been going on with the zombie apocalypse. But we have, as human beings, the innate ability to use this prefrontal cortex, that's the front of the brain, to try to override that and say, okay, it wasn't. But we have a hard time flipping that switch back. Because 90% of your brain is designed to inhibit the 10% that sits back here. That's the negative survival one.
Right.
The majority of it's supposed to turn that off.
Yep.
And under high stress and high cortisol, and when we feel a lack of, we don't feel control, the other 90% goes to lunch. And then the 10% comes out and plays.
That's what do we call that, Liz? Do you know what we call it?
Oh yeah, flip your your wig back.
So that's going. So explain that. Explain that.
No, I mean, it's when your prefrontal cortex, your blood vessels restrict, you go into fight or flight, boop, and now all the blood rushes to your hindbrain, and now you acting out of reaction mode. So that's where I heard more than 90% of people are at most of the time right now, especially since the pandemic. So
people walking around with their lids flipped.
I love that. That's great. I like that. That's exactly what it's like. Boom, you go to the back of the brain. Yeah, and then
so we talking a lot about the mind and how powerful that is, but let's talk about some things that are like very basic that we do on a day-to-day basis that we don't know have major impacts in terms of toxic environmental toxins. Like you got a new car and I got into it and I said, oh man, that new car smell. And I said, I know this is not good for my lymph. I know it's not good for my lymph system though. And what did you say?
I said, yeah, it's not. But I was surfing in my new Bronco, loving life. And I'm like, oh, I know this is not so good for me, but it's a new car. Yeah, so that's actually one of the most toxic things that you can expose the body to is a new car, because you have all the things that just came hot off the press with the chemicals in there, and they put a lot of sprays in there to give it a certain smell or look. And then if you throw in the air fresheners on top of that, that's a double down on it.
Yeah, and it was like we don't even think about these things. We just think, oh, I love the new car smell. I mean, as a kid, we love the smell of gas. Some of us, new car smells. And what's the number of how many people put certain toxic products on their body, Liz?
I think women, it was up to like 142 products or something, that toxic products that they wear almost on a daily basis or use, toiletries in your shower. I mean, then you got to think about your household supplies that you're using, your cleaning supplies.
Drinking out of water bottles.
Water bottles, the plastic water bottles that, got microplastics all in it. You drink tap water, our food, that has all these unnecessary chemicals in it. I mean, the list goes on. I don't feel like we're in a good place as far as toxicity goes these days. I think it's gotten a lot worse.
So how does that affect all of us in our lymph system?
Yeah, it's really amazing. I joke around all the time that I'm amazed that anybody is alive right now on this planet with what's thrown at the human body every day.
Statement.
I'm serious. Yeah. I mean, think about what the human body has to deal with. I mean, you better be showing.
You just flip my lid on that one.
From 0 to 100, Perry. Yeah. Oh, right. Man.
Right. Yeah. But think about what the human body has to deal with on a daily basis all the time. And you should just thank your body right now. Mm-hmm. And show it the respect that it deserves. Give yourself a nice hug, because there's so much that it has to deal with that it really honestly never had to deal with in the history of the world, my man. And then it's just relentless. It's coming at you. But here's the thing. I mean, you can't avoid it either. Right? But people say, well, what can I do about it? Well, that's the stuff that we're talking about here with your mental health and just the small little things that you can do, even working your lymphatics. Because I already know that somebody's lymphatic system is going to be overloaded. I joke to say, how do you know you have a lymphatic system problem? I'm like, because you're standing on this earth. I already know it needs work because you probably haven't done anything on purpose to try to help it. And then once you can keep yourself working as optimally as you can do it. And there's things that the body has to deal with that it's never had to even contemplate before. And it reminds me of something we were talking about, all the chemicals. I remember once, this takes me back about 3 years ago, we were in the car on the way over saying how we like to talk about movies and obscure quotes or whatever. I'm going to do one. Do you remember the first Batman with Michael Keaton? Mm-hmm. And with the Joker, what was the plot that he did? He took all the different...
Oh, he took all the chemicals and put it on a hairspray. And he put his Joker chemicals into all the products.
Right.
And everybody just used their products and they were poisoned.
Right. Yeah. So he put it in all the beauty products. But here's the thing. It wasn't just one product. You had to have the mixture of the two, and then something would happen. And that's when I started to think about this. When you mentioned how many chemicals get put on, especially for women in the day with makeup or perfumes or whatever. And it was kind of like that analogy where sadly we think that, okay, if something is on the shelf, it must be okay because the government put it there. Well, that's mistake number one. Right. And then that may be true. Let's say that product A, they said, is good. But what if product A, number one, is mixed with 125 other ones?
Wow.
Then what happens is you have a combination of substances they've never even contemplated looking at of how they react together. So you don't know what you're getting on the back end.
Wow.
You never thought about that. Oh, man.
You can't contemplate it because there's just so much. Yeah. So, it's great if it's by itself, but we're back to what I said before. Nothing works in isolation.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing you said too before that, you said, how do you know that if you have lymphatic issues? You said, well, look at the earth you're standing on, but the problem is people aren't really standing on the earth.
That's true. Yeah.
You're standing on rubber. You're standing on rubber synthetic shoes.
Yeah.
And that's why we talk about earthing so much. That's like the just natural easiest thing you can do is actually reconnect back to the organism. You know? So, but all these, it's a combination, and that's why we, at Inception, we have a detox circuit, and because people would probably think, what does this have to do with mental health? It's like, man, if your lymphatic system is compromised, your mental health is compromised too. Mm-hmm. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, you touched on it. What episode I was just watching the other day? I sent you a message when you were talking about sleep. And the brain draining its toxins at night when you sleep, if you sleep, which it does, And first of all, I was really excited. I was sending you a message saying, this is so great that you're talking about it. But it's back to the environment. So your brain cells have to live in its own environment. So it can, what they call, wire and fire and communicate with each other and process things. But if you have a toxic environment inside your body, you're going to have one around your brain, because there's fluid around your brain as well called cerebrospinal fluid. And if it's living in a toxic environment, it can develop inflammation. And then once you get the inflammation in there, then you can start to get a lot of symptoms. And you can manifest them anywhere in the body. One of the top signs of it is brain fog, tiredness, fatigue, lethargy. Does that sound like anybody you know? I mean, most humans, and we just take it for granted that I'm just working too hard. And that might be the case, but that probably means that you're not sleeping hard enough as well in conjunction with that. So then you get decrease in blood flow. And then if a neuron, which is in your brain, has to communicate with a neuron, they need to speak to each other. They either fire or they don't. There's no in between. It goes or it doesn't go. So those can be less. It takes more stuff to make it fire, or sometimes less stuff to make it fire. And then you suffer all the way around because the environment is not conducive to those cells functioning at their optimum. So that's why when people say, this is crazy, but I did the lymph stuff that you showed me. It was what's called a big 6 that I teach people. You rub and tap just 6 primary places on your body, and they say, is it crazy that I feel so much better after doing that? Because it seems like it was just so simple. I'm like, no, that's exactly how it works. That's just physiology.
That's how we were when we started getting manual lymphatic work done. I remember I was like, I called the person who did it and I said, what is the connection between the lymph and the soul? Because honestly, in the spirit, I felt like I had more of myself than I ever had.
I love that. That's a beautiful way to say it.
I think really
you feel more connected. Yeah, you feel more connected to yourself. You feel more empathetic to everything, and everything just becomes grander. It's almost like getting out of a float tank. Everything is just enhanced. Like I remember we had a group chat. We were like, I just love you, man. We were the woman that was giving us manual lymph drains, like, I love you. Really, because we felt so much better. I mean, it was a game changer. One of those major jumps.
And that's why we'll always come out here and visit you, because we know that how important that is for us to get that lymphatic work in. And that's why we encourage people at Inception to do that detox circuit. A lot of people are really like the reset circuit we have that has to do with the brain and a reset, but it's like you got to detoxify your body. And I don't want to use, because they said be careful about your words. Not you detoxify your body. You have to assist your body in helping it to do its natural detoxification, because it's always in a process in detoxification. Is that accurate? Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah. And there's most of your body is designed for that purpose. If you took a peek inside about all your organs, most of them are there because they're designed to get stuff out of you.
Yeah. And we don't typically spend most time putting stuff in.
You're always putting stuff in, right? And the one place stuff goes in most of the time, of course, is through your skin. And it's by no accident that most of the lymphatics are in your skin. And then the second place you have the largest amount of lymph is from the neck up. So you have what's called lymph nodes, which are small little garbage stations. I call them mini kidneys. And then they take stuff that flows into it, they break it down, and they kill some things with their immune system. And then they send it to the next one, and they say, okay, I'll take over from here. And then they pass it along and just clean it like a filter. All right. And you've got, depending on the resources that you look at, I've seen it swing from 400 to 700, but I'm like, I don't really care about the number. I just know there's more than one. Okay. And of that number, let's say 600, 1/3 of that number is from the neck up. 1/3 of 600 is. So what does that tell me? Because nature's not stupid. She's really smart. She's probably said, there's a lot of stuff that's important from the shoulders up, especially this brain thing that sits up there. I should probably find a way to drain it well. Right. And then here's the kicker. Medicine, until recently, didn't think that the brain had its own way to drain toxins or lymphatics. It didn't think there was lymph around the brain. First of all, I'm thinking to myself, how could you even contemplate that as a possibility when you know how important that it is? So that's a big whoops-a-daisy in medicine, honestly. That's one of the reasons why lymphatics are really being studied a lot now, because they see its relationship to brain health. Once they discovered it, then they're looking at maybe it's a contributing factor to all these neurodegenerative disorders that are running rampant, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and ADHD. You name, I don't care what what label you get it. It's saying the same thing to me. Yeah. It's you got inflammation. The inflammation is just manifesting itself with a different disease name. That's all it is.
Right.
So, and then the third place is your gut, your abdomen, and what they call the second brain / your emotional brain.
Yeah.
So when you walk into my door, I know three things. I'm going to check your skin, I'm going to check your brain, I'm going to check your gut. And then most of them are going to have an issue that's there. And if I can just clear those out a little bit, then that's when you have that reaction. I never knew I could feel this different. I never knew I could feel this good, because when you've suffered for so long, you forgot what good feels like. Yeah. You've set a new normal of suffering.
You have, I always say it, you lost contrast. And when you lost contrast, you can be dead in the dirt.
Right?
Yeah.
Your brain is always trying to establish a new normal. Always. That's adaptation.
I remember, Perry, when I came, I don't know, it was a couple months ago, and I was having terrible brain fog. You remember? It was so bad. And you worked on my brain, like on my head. You did like a brain reset. And I promise you, man, ever since that day, I haven't had brain fog. Like it went away. So, stuff must have been clogged all up in there. And people don't even realize. They don't even realize that they even have brain fog, But I mean, I can tell you, I feel great. Still.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, one of the reasons that I found this work is because several reasons, I think, if I look back on why the universe led me here. 5 years ago, I was really sick on my own, and my body just all of a sudden autoimmune turned on itself. I'm like, no, that's not a good enough explanation for me, because I don't believe that. You just haven't found the answer yet, or you're not looking at it the right way. And I got really bad. I mean, I got to a point where I had a physical breakdown, a mental breakdown, and I don't remember if I told you guys how bad it got, where I lost my brain function is the thing that scared me the most. Like I was headlong into Alzheimer's. I couldn't remember like my own children's name or what I did just a moment ago. I was so tired that I was sleeping 17 hours a day and still tired. And I had to leave practice and stop teaching. I got so depressed, and I remember I was teaching a course, barely pushing through it in Connecticut. And on the way home, I had a break, and I actually called the suicide hotline. And because I knew I needed to speak to someone, because I was driving home and thinking it would be really easy to turn my car into that pole.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need to call somebody. And I spoke to them, and then I hung up, but they're obligated to call the authorities if they think you're going to be a harm to yourself. And I pulled home. 20 minutes later, 2 police cars pulled into my driveway and knocked on my door. And that's when my family found out.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was. And that's when I knew I had to find the answer on my own. That was the catalyst of, okay, you're either going to fight or you're going to give up. And then I kid you not, like 2 days later, the universe threw at me a course where I discovered lymphatics. And then from there, it changed my life so much that I knew that it was my calling. So make your wounds your calling, I like to say. And then that's why I'm here now. And fast forward from that time, my brain is back sharper than before. But I also wanted to dive deeper into how I can focus more on the inflammation in the brain. And then that's when I started to study the Glymphatic that you mentioned on your episode from there. So I played with things that I learned from other people, but also on my own journey, and created a technique that I did for you, which specifically designed to drain the glymph and toxins from the brain. But you have to do it with the rest of the body.
Yeah.
So you can't just do the
Can't just
brain one.
clear
You
one
can't just do
area,
the
right.
bottom one. You have to do both. And
Right.
in medicine, they don't. They either do one or they do the other. They don't really even do the top one anymore because until recently they didn't know it existed. But I like to look this as almost like a full circle. I know I'm kind of going on for a while, but I'm almost done. You mentioned about cancer, right? And what was that she didn't want you to see her that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, my father and grandfather both passed away from glioblastomas, brain tumors. And I saw my father, who was everything to me when I was 13 years old, go from this Thor to nothing, right? And that always affected me even to this day. But I think it's bringing me back to, okay, you're supposed to be looking at brains and you're supposed to be looking at lymph and maybe put some connections together that people haven't looked at yet.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that that's why I'm on this earth right now.
And I believe that's why we're connected, because all of our this triangle right here, we all got into this based on our own stories. I didn't get into this because of, I wanted to make money. I had a problem that I needed to solve, and that's just like you, just like Liz. We trying to problem solve, and problem solving for ourselves makes it a problem being solved for other people when we can bring that connection together. So too, Liz talked about something earlier about tattoos. Like if we can just get into things like tattoos and foreign objects we put in our bodies, like a lot of women are getting,
Breast implant?
Not just breasts, ass implants as well.
That's
So,
right.
But all the people, I mean, I heard guys are getting calf and chest, everything these days.
Bodybuilding.
You can put everything.
So let's talk about what we're doing to our bodies, what we're putting into it foreign, and then that's also because you've been in the fitness world, and I want to get your experience with people who are in that world and how they actually how they're using their bodies and maybe better ways to do so.
Yeah, that's a great question. I get that often about tattoos and whether you can see, I'm kind of in big trouble because I'm loaded with them. I've got them on my arms and I got a whole back piece.
Wow.
From there that was done in different stages. Right. I actually I have my own podcast and I interviewed several neuroscientists on there. And one of my favorites, her name is Dr. Claudia Aguirre. And she's a neuroscientist, and she does a lot of stuff now in the world of skin and cosmetics because she sees the relationship of the skin to the brain. I mean, that's a neurological connection that I'll be happy to get into later if you want. But because skin health and brain health ultimately go together. And she said that what they're seeing on the cadaver studies is that the lymphatics, which is supposed to be clear, in your anatomy pictures, it's green. It's not really green.
Right.
If it's green, you're in big trouble. But it's supposed to be clear, except in the abdomen. In the abdomen, it's milky white. Right? Because of where.
Blood?
Yeah, it's milky white.
Or lymph?
Yes, but it's lymph.
Okay.
But the rest of the body is supposed to be clear. So in here, it's called lacteals. Right? And they find that the lymph is black with people who have tattoos.
Really?
And if you cycle back to what I said before, where does most of the lymph live? In the skin. And the ink never goes away. It slowly absorbs in. It just fades over time, right? That's because it goes into the system. Now, they don't know, they can't say at this point that that's going to be a contributing factor to a disease process. But they haven't extrapolated that far. I don't think that they can do that yet. I think it's going to be a lot of factors that go into that. Well, where did you get it done? What was the quality of the ink? The sanitary?
Is it the same
how
thing
you did
with
it?
the different chemicals?
It's the same thing, like the Batman again. I don't know which ones you got. And then also, when you get a tattoo and where you get it, you could be at a more vulnerable point in your life when you get a tattoo and your immune system's down because you got a tattoo because you just lost a loved one and you're getting something to remember them. Your immune system is going to be affected differently than if you just got, you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're going to respond differently to the tattoo. So tattoos for me, one, they're scar tissue. So they hold tissue trauma, but they also hold emotional trauma because most people get tattoos for some type of personal reason. So a lot of my chronic pain patients are emotion-based autoimmune people. I always go to past scars because every scar is a trauma, no matter how small and no matter how long ago. It's the smaller ones sometimes that are the biggest ones.
Wow.
Right? And also the significance of a tattoo, right? And with
the emotional significance.
Yeah, because what I'll do is I'll work a scar, but I'll work the tattoo as well, because there's a connection to that one. I actually had a story I'll share with you if you want to hear it. A woman was having chronic low back pain, and she was in her mid-20s, too young to be having all these issues. And she went to every kind of therapy you could think of, and chiropractic and MRIs and all this stuff. And then it just wasn't getting any better, and they couldn't find a physiological reason for why it's there.
Right.
So she came on in to see me, and so I'm not going to do what everybody else has done, because obviously that's not working.
Right.
The first thing I do is don't look at the back, I look at the front. And I went towards the front, and I saw that she actually had a belly button ring that was there, navel ring, but it was removed. There's a little bit of scar over it. And so I feel around that region. And first of all, that's where most of your lymphatics sit, around your navel, because that's your small intestines.
First of all, when you...
Oh, you remember that?
Yeah. When you did that on me, man, I was dying.
Yeah.
Like pressing around the belly button. You saw my eyes go down because I just remember. But now after you showed me that, and I'm gonna let you continue too, but it's like once you showed me that, and you told me that anytime you push on tissue on your body, it shouldn't hurt. Right. So when I was now I know from that experience, I go and I work that area, and I worked it to the point where I don't have that buildup of inflammation there. So
Perfect. Yeah.
So yeah.
Navel is super powerful region to go for several reasons. Because one, that's where you were attached for life to your mother. So that's pretty big.
Yeah.
So there's emotion stuff around there. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on this earth. Right. But two, that's an area where in Eastern medicine, if the way you approach it is, all of the fascia, which is the connective tissue of the body, originates from the navel. Because that's where the body grew out from.
Oh, wow.
So in order to help any fascial adhesion, let's say you've got bound up fascia in your left calf.
Yeah.
You're never going to get rid of that if it's tight around your navel, because that's the origin point.
Right. That's like a t-shirt, right? If your t-shirt is like that, I need to go here.
Correct.
To unleash. Okay, that makes sense.
But here's the thing. Nobody ever comes in saying, Doc, I got to see you. My navel's killing me.
No.
They don't have pain there.
No.
That's what stop chasing pain means. It means treat pain, but don't chase it. So I'm going to look at your calf, and I'm going to treat your calf, more so because you expect me to treat your calf to help you feel better. So I'm doing it more for your benefit than for me.
Right.
Because I know better.
Benefit.
Right? I know better.
Right.
So then I'm going to go up to the navel, and then what I do is I'm going to stick my finger all around. I'm not going to go inside and do a swirly. That's my joke. I'm going to go around it.
Yeah.
And then most people will jump off the table, and they're like, oh my God. I mean, that hurts.
Yeah. Well, I was jumping off the table.
And they say, is that supposed to hurt? No, it's not supposed to hurt. Right. And then they usually go, you're pressing really hard. No, when I push hard, you'll know it. Right. But they get very emotional too. So to cycle back on the importance of that is that I asked her, what's with the ring? I mean, how long have you had that? She said, well, I got that when my grandfather passed away. Right?
Yeah.
And then, but she took it out. So for me, I had two things. And because I delved deeper into her relationship with her grandfather. Because obviously it was important enough where she felt she had to get something on here as a form of remembrance. So I worked the scar tissue because of the scar, but also worked it from the emotional standpoint for her grandfather. Because there's some other things that I can do when I'm working with somebody from an emotional standpoint. And then I kid you not, then she stands on up and I go, how's that? And I didn't touch the back. I said, how's that back of yours? And she said, it doesn't hurt. Right? And I'm like, that's awesome. Right? But what I'm looking for is if stuff sticks.
Right.
Right? Because I can make anything feel better for a little bit. That's what alcohol's for. Right?
Yeah.
But then what I do is I called her 2 days later and she said, I'm still doing great. I can move and do this sort of thing. And then that's what I want people to understand is that one, you need to look outside the side of pain. Two, and usually for me, it's just the opposite side of where you are. So if something's on the front, look at the back. If something's on the top, look at the bottom. If something's on the left, look at the right. right? That's kind of mirroring. That's the universe, like holographic stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then never forget that there's a human being that's attached to what you're working on. And we talked about in the car is that, you know, in medicine especially, I think that that's been lost.
Yeah.
Where we go right after a diagnosis or a tissue with all these wonderful technological things, which I'm blessed that we have because you can save a life. But we've lost the ability, at least in medicine, one, to have the art of physical touch, to assess, but also for me, when I work on somebody, I'm not even really thinking about the tissue I'm pushing on. I'm watching your response to my touch.
Right. Yeah, that gives a lot of information.
That's big. So if I touch you on your right shoulder here and I see you physically move something else, or you stop breathing, or your eyes look away, that's a very, very powerful neurological tell that you don't know that you're doing. That's why it's powerful, because it's subconscious. Those are the ones that drive disease in my mind. They're the ones that drive healing, is what's happening in the subconscious level, which I hope we have time to get into because that's huge.
Yeah.
And then the other one beyond touch is if I just sit down and I have a conversation with the person who came to see me, and I truly believe that when I talk to you, I know exactly where I need to touch on the second part.
Right.
From talking to you. So those are the ones that I always do first before I go to the treatment part.
And like you said, a lot of people, you know, I found that after we started doing lymphatic work, you know, I can go get massages and things of that nature, but you can actually create more inflammation with massage if it's done, you know, in a certain way. And, you know, you can call it fluff and buff, you know, but are you getting to, I feel better for that moment? And anybody can do that, like you said. And I'm starting to see that on Instagram. I'm starting to see a lot of these massage therapists, and it's like, oh, look, you can move now after I just worked on this. But nobody shows you that movement 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, because 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, they can show you a body sprain like what happened to Liz. We're working with somebody who swears that they were doing right by her. And in their mind, they probably were. And because, you know, they work with so many people and they get up and they feel so great, but the follow-up is where you find out really what you were doing, if it was helpful or not.
Yeah, that's where the proverbial rubber meets the road. And where, first of all, you have to remove your ego from the equation.
Yeah.
Because I really want to know if I know something's going to work when I first do it to you, right? At least a little bit. But I don't know how much or for how long.
Right.
So I always tell people that, you know, one, three things might happen here. Is that one, nothing is going to change. And for me, that's the worst.
Right.
If nothing changed, that means I'm way off the mark. Like I really missed something. Okay. The other one is that you're going to feel awesome. And that's awesome. And we want that. And then I want to see how long that lasts and if we can build on that.
Yeah.
Or number three, you're going to feel worse. And I say this, that's also awesome. And then they go, what, have you lost your mind? I go, no, because for me, it's a change, right? But because it doesn't mean because it got worse that that's a bad thing either. But a lot of people have to preface that because they're so scared of something getting worse that they get the anxiety and the stress from that. So I have to prepare them and say, it's okay. It's all right. Yeah. Everything that happens to you is just one thing for you and for me. It's information. It's bioinformation. Yeah. And then we need to determine what we want to do with it. And that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over my career, David, is that I used to be one of those hard crack 'em, rack 'em, push in there and make you scream on my table because it's worth every penny, right? Like it really gets in there and then you're like crying and you feel like, oh, that was awful, but I feel so good. But they never got better. And I started to look more about the brain and the sense of threat. Like if I push on you and I make you scream on my table, I'm a tiger who's pouncing on you and I'm eating you.
Yeah, the brain has the same response, right? Whether you're a massage therapist or a chiropractor, right? It doesn't look at you as like non-threat, right? It's still going into fight or flight because you're pushing on me in that way.
Yeah, Tiger Perry is here, right? And then so I'm making a change, but I'm not making a lasting change.
Right.
So your nervous system and your body has to grant you permission to come on in. And the only way I'm going to do that is to be nice. non-threatening,
Yeah.
right? It's like any relationship. If you're in my grill, I'm not going to let you in, right? And so it's a basic form of communication. So I looked at people who were doing really light work, like barely touching stuff, at least for some assessment, and doing some things, and like, oh, come on, that's not doing anything. And I don't know, I didn't introduce it into my practice, honestly, because it was more about me at that point. I felt ridiculous.
Right.
And I felt like they're going to think that this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I took my ego out of it and just based it on science and my experience and outcomes that, wow, people made such a drastic difference. And then they started to notice it. And then that came from a sense of empowerment where I've seen the Matrix, you just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Because the Matrix reference, we got to get that in there, right?
Yeah. And that, I had that same question, that conversation about people who come into Inception where they're used to things hitting them over the head to have the contrast that something is working or not. So when you come into Inception, what's one of the first services that we have people do in our first circuit, Liz?
Brain training.
The Magnosphere.
First, the Magnosphere, then you go to brain training after that. But the Magnosphere, so you can relax and, push your body into, relax so everything else works better.
But the problem is that a lot of people, because the Magnosphere doesn't hit you over the head, nothing in our facility is going to hit you over the head. If we did that, we would be creating more trauma and you coming in to try to offset the trauma. Yeah. So everything really there is permission based. Your body is going to give the permission whether it wants to go there or not. And that's why certain things can take even more time. And it can't just go from A to Z because, again, what is that? That's too much of a drastic shift for the body, right? So what you're saying is like makes so much sense to me. And I wanted to throw that in there for people can understand that the light stuff, the light work is really more of a way. I can go and lift my garage up. I'd rather just push a button.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think what you're doing and what we're doing collectively is being able to push the buttons and the brain saying, I feel safe enough for you to help me. Right?
Yeah.
Versus create more trauma and let me pull out my big hammer.
Well, no, that's what had happened to me because I had that work done. And I remember when I was getting that heavy work done, the smash them, it was bending me all over the place. And I was almost in tears because it hurt so bad. So my body was already stressed out. 2 weeks later, I find out I have a body sprain. So no light work that I've ever gotten ever has caused any negative impacts on me before. But that one heavy, crazy treatment of stretching and just moving all over the place and pushing and just, it was completely traumatizing, to be honest. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah, and the light work, from what we noticed, that permission-based work grants the biggest release of what the body is trying to let go of. Yeah. You do the heavy work and it gives you this much. I gave you this much. You're doing the light work and the body's like, oh, thank you. It's only that little drain in the sink. That thing is small for the big tub, but that's all you need, right? Yeah. You need that one little go right there, So I think that's important for people to understand that it's not just, looking for like, well, I didn't feel anything.
Yeah. Well, people have a hard time having a sense of awareness or feeling their own body. They've lost touch with it. They're detached because there's just so much coming at them that they're numb in a way, right? Yeah. And then I remember my first visit out to Inception, and I've told Elizabeth and probably told you, is that my favorite thing there was the Magnosphere. And when I said it, I was like, can I just stay here for a little bit longer?
He's like, on to the next circuit. No, I want to stay in this one.
And because I made the circuit through there. But because I could feel that when I was in there. And a lot of people, have a hard time with silence.
Yeah.
And
well, they're desensitized too. People are so desensitized.
Because if you're lying on a table and somebody's usually doing an electric muscle stim or heat or ice or something, it's this sensory input. But when I was in that Magnosphere, I could really sense some things because I became attuned with my body. But it was very peaceful for me when I did it. And then one of the reasons why I also love the flotation tank, because that's a sense of just being able to float and lose pressure systems going into the body to have your brain clear up. And you know this better than anybody from studying trauma therapy. One of the things that I think it was Peter Levine talks about is that when he used the word titration as a term, where you have to ease your way into these things. Yeah. You can't just throw everything in one shot, because the first thing the body's going to do is put that wall up quick, fast, and in a hurry. Yeah. Because it just wants to survive your session and leave.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you change anything because you went too hard, too fast, too soon. And I noticed that in emotional based work is that even when you have to go slow in releasing somebody's emotions, because they're holding on to something as their life preserver and a sandbar so they don't drown. And they don't know who they are when they're not holding on to that life preserver. Yeah. And then you take it away and then they sink. Right?
Yeah. No, I've personally experienced that. Clients moving too fast. You know, we have boot camp classes, and sometimes it may not be good for you to do it in the way that you're doing it in terms of 3 days straight or 4 days straight. You may need to do one a week. You may need to do one a month. It just all depends on all these combination of the things to make up the Joker toxin, right? That one, you can't take them all out at once. We need to remove them slowly. So I think that, I've definitely experienced that where I'm trying to process too much emotion. I'm flooded. You know, the system is flooded with emotion. And it's like, that could literally re-traumatize you.
Overwhelming. Very, very overwhelming.
And you have people in these trends. Now we're going into the psychedelic world, right? Where a lot of people are going over to Peru and doing ayahuasca. And you took your American-based, very toxic body. Like you said, you're amazed that we're even living. Right?
Yeah, I am.
So you go over there where you're in a jungle and we don't have the same environment as the jungle. You go over there and you do something like ayahuasca, and man, all your shit is coming up. And you come back here, and these people, I've worked with them for years. A lot of them, they can't integrate back into society because it just brought up. You open Pandora's box, and you did it with something that's like, it's like a sledgehammer. That's ayahuasca. You know, you may not be ready for that. You know, and so you have to go through, you know, other things, and like what you've done, or I've done 60 different healing modalities and using them over a 15-year time period. I didn't use them all at once. Right. You know, so just slowly getting back versus trying to, we talked about it, a good analogy of the Biggest Loser, you know, that show where they took you from your environment, you know, where you overate and you didn't sleep and you had so much stress, and they took you to California. And now they're going to have, okay, now work out and eat well. And yeah, you're going to lose that weight. But when you go back, what do? You regress.
Yeah, you're going to fall back on your survival habits. And that's the one thing that I've found, even from myself, is that we want to try to be better and improve, which is fantastic. But people will, you see it in the fitness industry a lot, your New Year's resolution, right? Nobody's in the gym, and then everybody's in the gym. And then they're there 4 or 5 days a week, 2-3 hours a day. And then a month later, it's empty again. Yeah. Because they went from 0 miles an hour to 1,000. They gave up every habit that wasn't working for them and then switched it to the other side. But it was too much of a shock to the system. Yeah. And they may get through it for a little while, but every single cycle, that happens. So you have to do the next, I call it the next first step. Everything should be like a first step, and then you take the next first step. So if I want to go from here to that door, I can't jump there. The brain can't do giant leaps. It needs to do one step at a time, and it's never going to be a straight line most of the time. You're going to zigzag left and right, maybe even do a circle backwards, but that's the way that it is, because at least it's a form of change when you get there. So I coined the term little tiny action steps. Okay. Just small little things that you can do different. And one thing I love that you say is correct me if I'm wrong, but you say you don't believe in right and wrong, right?
I believe in resourceful and unresourceful.
Right. So that's what I'm talking about, the power of language.
Good or bad.
Right. Good or bad. Yeah. Good or bad. Yeah. So I believe the same thing with the body, is that because that's cultural, that's societal. Because good for you could be bad for me.
Right.
It's all about perception and where you're raised and things like that. So the brain doesn't think in terms of, is this good for me or is this bad for me? It thinks in terms, I love your term, is it resourceful for me or not? Or the way I look at it is it useful or not? Because it's not going to do anything it doesn't think is useful.
Right.
Because, dude, that's just stupid. Because I'm not going to do something that's going to kill me faster, right? That's not a natural order of things. So when I look at somebody who's suffering in pain or discomfort, they have something going on with them, the first thing you do is you get an adversarial relationship with your body, and you start to resent your body, and you hate your body, or you're ashamed of your body. And it's always a battle, a fight, kill, conquer.
Yeah.
And that's the term that we think about in Western medicine. That's why I gravitated towards Eastern medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. It's more about, connection and resonance and balance and harmony in that way, because that's a different energy shift.
Right.
So when somebody comes on in and they're suffering with this, I have to say, okay, why is the body thinking this is a useful thing to do at this moment in time with what it's got to work with? Because it's doing it for a reason, not by accident and not as punishment. It's protection. So what's its play here? And then that's when you have the communication with the body at that point. And that I learned through neuroscience. It's not good or bad. It's useful or not useful.
Yeah. And I said that too in that conversation with you about being in the wellness world and the fitness world since I was probably 16, and seeing all these different fads come along. And, some of them became very cultish, and when it becomes cultish, it doesn't give you the ability to adapt and change. For instance, I mean, alkaline water was a big thing, right? And for a lot of people, it still is like, it's alkaline water, and it's no, that's, your body is not, if your body was all alkaline, you can correct me on this, you die.
Yeah.
So,
You die.
so that process of, I just need to be alkaline, or I need to eat 100% vegan or even carnivore. The thing is, for me, is it resourceful or is it unresourceful? And it may be resourceful for a moment, but that don't mean it's going to be resourceful next week.
Right.
What's the
balance? Everything is a balance.
Yeah, yin and yang. I mean, that's what it's there for. It's that ebb and flow. It'll go a little bit this way, then sometimes that way. And then what may be good for you now, when you keep doing it, might not be tomorrow.
Right. So you said about the tiny little steps. So let's leave on this note. What are a couple tiny little steps that people can do to help that their lymphatic systems to become more supported?
That's a great question. So one of my favorite words is awareness. And the first step in changing anything is to become aware of it, because you can't change something until you're aware of it, right? We were saying that before. You're like, where did all these things come from that were always there? Right? Like I just bought a new car and then all of a sudden I see it everywhere. I'm like, oh, come on, really?
Right.
So when you become aware of it, you're going to shift your behaviors or your habits. So that's a big one, because most people, when they come in to see me, they've never heard of it before. And then they've never been shown what they can do to help it. And then they usually get upset that nobody showed them this before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they say, that's all it was. That's all it was. Yeah. And the solution doesn't have to be complicated to work at all. Right? So about lymph, two things really, really move lymph well. One is movement. So I tell people, just try to move more of yourself, more often, more ways, more environments. I'll call that 4M motion. And I can encapsulate that in one word. Just do different than you're doing now. Don't do the same thing all the time. Variation, variability, and variety, it's called. Right? Because when you do the same thing all the time, the lymph is a liquid system. It'll start to ebb and flow based on how your tissue is formed, like water coming down a cliff. So sometimes you got to go in there and move rocks around so it flows a little bit different. And that's the same thing with here. You just change your training up and then you shift the fluids around. That's why here comes a tip. Just jump up and down in the morning, especially, because that's usually when you're most stagnant, because the lymph should really move, especially in your brain at night. If it doesn't, you feel very tight or stiff in the morning. Jump up and down on the balls of your feet. You don't have to completely leave the ground. Keep your balls of the feet on the ground and breathe in and out through your nose, not your mouth, because that's going to increase pressure in your diaphragm and move the lymph that's in your belly, especially, for 30 seconds to a minute.
Okay.
Right? And then you separate your legs by shoulder width apart, have a slight bend in your knees, and then I call it noodle arms, where you just have your arms hang by your side and you swing really fast left and right, and just let your arms swing and hit you.
Okay.
That's from Qigong.
Okay.
It's a form of that. So you're just whipping your arms around. And the other one is do more breathing through your diaphragm. Breathing moves fluid because of the change in pressure. And people are really into breathing right now. There's so many different ways to do it. But I tell people the easiest way to breathe through your diaphragm is to become aware of breathing more through your nose, less through your mouth.
Okay.
So if you jump up and down on the balls of your feet, breathing in and out through your nose, you'll really, really move your lymph a lot. And then, you can start to work directly on your lymphatics as well.
Okay.
Because what happens is there's a lot of people say, I move already and I breathe already. Do I have to do lymphatic work? Yeah, because sometimes it's so backed up and so stagnated and so obstructed, those are no longer enough anymore.
So before we let you go too, because I want you to touch upon that with fitness, this exercise. Just because we're going to the gym and lifting weights or doing cardiovascular activities, does that mean that we have I want to call it a resourceful or an optimized lymphatic system? Does that mean that?
No, it should, right? But sometimes, like I said before, is that it's overloaded and it's too stagnated. Because you have to remember what we said before is that when you train and you work out, you break down tissue and you destroy tissue and you create what we call metabolic waste, cellular waste. And when those can't get out of you, they become, so your body becomes toxic to itself because it can't get rid of it. And same with food. I tell people, even if you eat wonderfully, all that food becomes a toxin if it can't get out.
Even if it was quote unquote.
I don't care if it's organic. It could be the best food in the world. If you can't get rid of, so the cells use those nutrients, right? And then the cells also pee and poop too. That's called cellular waste. And once they use the nutrients, that's got to get out. Right. One of the biggest ways it gets out is when you go number 2, right? Yeah. So people who have constipation usually end up having a lot of toxicity. And that's why constipation and brain issues go together, right? And then, so when those detoxifications, as we mentioned before, get, they're not working at optimum, because you can have more than one, then you become stagnant. Yeah. It's so, I tell people, you have to go in and just move it, all right? And because what I've seen with fitness and exercise is that people overtrain all the time. Yeah.
And this is coming from an ex-bodybuilder, right? Because
I was into bodybuilding for so many years for that, and you break down tissue, you lift heavy stuff up, you put it down, and when you get hurt, you don't stop no matter what. And then your nutrition is very stressful. You're under high stress, and then you train, and when you train, you create inflammation. Yeah. But that's good. Yeah. You want inflammation. If you don't have inflammation, you would die. You just don't want to have constant inflammation.
Right. Chronically.
Right. We'll talk about that.
Chronic inflammation. And that's what we call autoimmune disease or chronic pain. Yeah. And a big piece of that is the inability for your body to remove the toxins that's there. So one of the biggest things that I see in medicine of why programs are not successful is the basic premise of health is this. Nutrients go in, right, through the mouth. Yep. Right? And then waste goes out. Nutrients in, waste out. Right? Now, if waste can't get out, it stays inside of you, and then all those nutrients going in become waste. So what I find is that everybody focuses on what's going in.
Yeah. Yeah.
They haven't focused on what needs to get out.
Right.
So you have to remove what's there and reduce what's going in. But you have to do the remove what's there part first.
Yeah. You can't place seeds on bad soil.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's a roadblock for people. And then that's one of the reasons why one of the first stages of people that I see who have chronic pain, chronic lymph issues, and brain fog is the chronic stress has decreased their digestion, slowed it down, and they have low amounts of stomach acid, digestive stomach acid. If you have low stomach acid, nothing's going to work.
Right.
I'm going to tell you that right now. Like, you have to get that under control first, because everything you're sticking in here has got to go down in there. And then the stomach acid's job is to break it down and send it everywhere.
Yeah.
What happens if you can't break it down?
And that's again, that's why we like working with people like yourself. We trying to look at the big picture of everything. You know, we call it, we are in a box of mental health, but we don't look at it just as mental health, because all of it affects you, you know, from top to bottom. So I want to look at the whole system, and if the whole system is working optimally, guess what? You have good mental health.
Imagine that.
Right.
Imagine that, right?
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah. Think that inner wealth.
That's inner wealth. So we're going to leave on that note, guys. All right, Liz over there back in the D. Thank you again, Dr. Perry, for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you. That's what's called a flow state.
Dr. Perry.
It's over already?
It's over already.
Jeez. I missed having you here too, Liz. Missed you.
No, I know. Well, next time.
You've been listening to the Inner Wealth Podcast on EYL with David and Elizabeth. Theme song produced by Be Ready for West Coast Creations. I am Razcast, reminding you to take action, be proactive, be congruent, get out of the matrix, get your mind right. We've automated mental health at inception. Join the movement.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
Step by David Lee.